Well, our national debt, the total of annual budget deficits, is reaching a new milestone, topping $22 trillion for the first time in our nation's history. So how concerned should we be about the impact of this? What do you think?
Well, David, look, this is not a pretty number. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You just put up the debt clock, and the numbers, other than being fun to watch, are scary. But nobody's going to stop buying our U.S. debt here. I mean, we're the world's biggest spender, for now, the world's biggest economy, and we're the world's reserve currency. So there's a demand for our debt out there. People don't want to stop, say, lending to us so that we stop our economic activity. So, yes, I do believe that Democrats and Republicans need to get some of the spending under wraps. But to be concerned about a number as far as $22 trillion to say, OK, this is it, kids, the party's over, I don't think so.
Short term, this is definitely not a crisis. We're going to borrow $1 trillion over the next year. We're going to pay less than 3% interest on that money. I can't even borrow $1 million at 3%. I asked Steve just earlier. He turned me down. So the fact that rates
I'll give it to you for two, Jack.
You misheard me. 3% a week.
Oh, there he is. The fact that rates are low. Now, long term, we're already past the point. We're not paying this money back. Come on. We're going in a hole further $1 trillion a year. We're going to have to inflate this debt away over the long term. Right now, inflation remains low, and so are rates.
But we've got some bad news coming out today. U.S. tax revenues for the calendar year 2018, not the fiscal year, but for the calendar year, actually fell, and the deficit's widening. So with that and the fact that we're hitting this milestone, Steve, don't you think that that's going to be blamed on Trump and potentially an issue that's going to affect the ability to do further tax cuts and maybe even get some tax hikes?
Well, the reason the economy did as well as it did last year was, because of the tax cuts and deregulation. What happened last year as the year went on? We had a tax increase. It's called tariffs. Tariffs are sales taxes. It wasn't just the amount itself. The uncertainty it created about investment, which is why the fourth quarter went down a little bit in terms of growth. I think that issue is going to be resolved in the next couple of months. You already see good signs of that already. When these trade issues are out of the way, you're going to see investment, you're going to see growth resume its way again, and the revenues go up. And by the way, even if the government doesn't get as much money, I say, so what? It's the welfare of the American people that counts. If people's salaries are going up, opportunities are going up, Washington, tighten your belt.
I keep hearing these tax cuts are going to pay for themselves. I'll believe it when I see it, but I'll tell you one thing for sure. If you want to get some kind of multiplier effect in the economy where this money makes money, you put more money in the hands of the poor. The poor spend everything they get their hands on. It's almost the definition of being poor. That money multiplies throughout the economy. These tax cuts were too tilted to the rich, and that's why you're not getting the big multiplier effects.
The bottom
Jack,
line is if you don't have investment, you don't get economic growth. And so the poor hurt the most on that. And that's why in terms of a tax cut, round two, when we eventually get one, should be on the personal side, including payroll tax cuts. So with the flat tax, payroll tax cut, I've got a program for that, David.
Flat tax. Go ahead, Jack.
You need high wealthy individuals, high corporations to create jobs and have job training too. I mean, that's the other thing too that helps lift up the poor is that these corporations put the jobs out. They have job training that helps them. The other thing too is the tax cuts can be paid for, but you have to have regulation rollback. You have to have a business environment that they want to operate in. You can't do this. Hey, you didn't build that type of thing, and then they don't want to open up their business because they're afraid to because of the government intervention.
We're doing well on jobs. Unemployment is at historic lows. What we are not doing well on at all is the unbelievably wide gap between the haves and the have-nots. It's wide and getting wider. We ought to do something about it.
Let's go back to the debt for a second here, guys, and talk about the interest that we're paying. We're in a very low interest rate environment. We're already paying something like $500 billion in interest on the national debt. That's for stuff that we've already bought before. In 9 years, it's projected to be $1 trillion. We can't afford to do that. We're spending more on that potentially than we're spending on our military. That has to be brought under control because that's not where we want our tax dollars to go.
And raising taxes is not the way you're going to solve it. You're just going to get what Europe has and what Japan has done and what Greece has done. And so you get economic growth, a little bit of spending restraint, and positive entitlement reform.
A lot of spending restraint, Steve. We have to have a lot of spending restraint so that we can stop the bleeding.
The amazing thing is with a sound dollar, you get 4% growth by golly, over time, that is a miracle in terms of compound revenue growth. We saw it in the 80s.
One thing that's definitely growing is the debt. By the way, it doubled under George Bush. It doubled under President Obama. If it doubles this time, it's going to be $40 trillion in 6 years. I don't think we can afford that. All right, moving on.